Well, it's been quite a week in the life of Burnley Football Club, hasn't it? It began on Sunday with a deeply disappointing performance in a 3-1 defeat at home to Aston Villa, with another head-scratching team selection from Vincent Kompany that left many of us wondering if the man who masterminded the title charge last season hadn't been a little too hasty in abandoning many components of that team and going all in on his new faces for the Premier League campaign. But before we had too much time to sink into melancholic concern, along came the Carabao Cup. Rarely a source of joy for the Clarets in the Sean Dyche era, but this time a 1-0 win at Forest proved to be just the tonic the Claret faithful needed. Some of the old guard were back. It turns out Charlie Taylor is alive and well and can indeed still play at left back, and Josh Brownhill was fit and available and not sat nursing a brew in a motorway service station with David Moyes. The game was won by Zeki Amdouni's first goal for the club in front of a wildly celebrating away end, a sight to cheer even the most pessimistic of supporters. He was assisted by a brilliant storm from midfield from Sander Berger, not sitting or holding or shielding, but creating in the final third. And then there was that wonderful, fast-flowing, high-speed counter-attack that almost ended in Wilson Odebert's maiden goal for the club. What a goal that would have been. But even without the finish, it offered an enticing promise of the kind of football we hope to see this season. But for every up, it seems there has to be a down. Injuries to Vitinho and Aaron Ramsey took them out of the game early, but the biggest concern was for Heymar Ekdal, stretchered off with what appears to have been a very serious knee injury. No wonder that when Vincent Kompany was interviewed after the game, he looked dazed and confused. He'd been given a reminder of the strength in depth and options available to him, and then cruelly had those options removed. Goodness knows what has been going on in Kompany's world this week when it comes to the transfer window. We continue to be linked with half the wingers known to Belgium, but especially to Genk's Mike Trezor, who appears to have changed his mind half a dozen times about whether he wants to take his talents to Turf Moor. There's a daunting prospect of Tottenham at home on Saturday, but before then there is the madness of transfer deadline day to come. By 11 p.m. on Friday night, the window will be closed. Matt Williams, Sasha Tavolieri, and the mass ranks of Twitter Clarets will be able to put their phones down and take a well-deserved breather. But what will the squad look like when they do? What kind of team will VK pick to take on Ange Postecoglou's boys on Saturday afternoon? What lessons will have been learnt from the Villa game and the Forest match? And will we finally be ready to get down to business and start getting some Premier League points on the board? To discuss all of that and plenty more, I'm joined by the usual crew of Andrew Greaves, Chris Broden and Paul Woodhouse. Greavesy, let's start with that win at Forest. What were your biggest takeaways from that game?
Well, I think it was a sheer amount of changes he made. I think it was only O'Shea who kept his place from the defeat against Aston Villa, so 10 changes. And as you said then in that opening, it appears Charlie Taylor is still a pretty decent left back, looking at the praise he got from the travelling Clarets. Muric, apparently again imperious, not a lot to do apparently, but kind of commanded his area quite well. His starting positions looked and inspired confidence in his defenders. And Josh Brownhill, massive part in Amdouni's goals. Brilliant. You mentioned Berge and that wonderful run that he came on, but actually, the little header that Brownhill plays into the path of Amdouni, again, shows you what he's capable of. And, we've talked a couple of times, and I think on the podcast on Tuesday, we did wonder whether, wondered aloud whether Kompany had been a little bit too cute with his selections. And that's a word I think you've bandied about on the WhatsApp group with, all of these kind of forward wingers playing across a front four and all that, when actually what it really needs is somebody to break deep from midfield, and probably one of the most creative players from last season, aside from Benson and Zarore, Brownhill, actually being given that chance to sit behind a forward line.
Woody, no chance for us in America to watch that game because ESPN Plus shamefully opted for Doncaster versus Everton, but it sounded like a little bit of a revenge of the old guard in a sense, wasn't it?
It was definitely a team that you recognised. It almost felt nostalgic looking at that 11 that had done so well last year. But listening to Phil Bird on Claret's Player, he wasn't panicking too much throughout the game. And it seemed to be, apart from Ekdal's injury, which did go on for quite a while, they were talking about necks, knees, and all sorts. I think the two highlights that we saw of the goal and the break that Odebert missed. Looked very, very nice. It looked like that flowing VK Burnley football of last year. Well, maybe, just maybe, we've turned a little bit of a corner.
It did feel a bit like that, didn't it? I mean, just seeing the away end celebrating and swift counter-attacks, it felt like last season again, didn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one where the week started with the PFA team from last season being announced. Quite why it's so late in the day, but to see 5 Burnley players in that team was a fabulous achievement. But only one of them currently playing, starting regular in the Premier League. You do feel that sort of blueprint from last year has been ripped up a little hastily. The components of the side, the shape of the team, and just having that balance. A proper left back in there, 3 central midfielders. It just felt a lot more, a bit more experience rather than exciting players. Very young, inexperienced players, but having those older heads in the side against the Forest side that, let's have it right. I think it was pretty much half the team that's played Forest's opening Premier League games, including a certain £15 million centre forward up front, Chris Wood. But it's the likes of Aurier in there, and if you win any win at the City Ground's a fine win, but to come away with a clean sheet. The chance, the break, just lightning, one-touch football. It's sensational. It's a shame Odebert couldn't finish it off or roll Foster in. But, to nick it, like I say, a great confidence booster as well for Amdouni. Doesn't matter, who it's against, what competition it's in, for him to get up and running and to show, that, little touch off the chest, the little touch with the head and the volley. Right in front of that away fan, the 1,700 magnificent away support as usual. It's it just feels like a nice little, the season's finally started.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting as well on that away support. Quite a lot of them were stuck on the M1 for quite a while because of traffic. So I know, Tony Scholes and whichever coaches he was on didn't actually get there until the second half. Literally got there and only saw the second half. So you mentioned that fabulous, traveling with all of the kind of obstacles that get put in the way. But I noticed our friends at Turfcast have described Amdouni as the Swiss Messi. And actually on a couple of the highlights videos, the little magician, you can see little touches, little flashes. Now I'm not gonna go down that road and call him the Swiss Messi, but I mean, Chris, you picked up on that. Oh, well, I've done that now. Yeah, go on then.
No, we're not having the Swiss Messi.
I'm falling for it. He looks very good. I mean, that composure, that late in the game, come on as a substitute, the ball over the chest, the head, and then to take that volley, all with a goalkeeper coming out and closing him down, defender near him as well. I think we thought from seeing his form in the latter half of last season that we've got someone quite special. It's that bits where he's dropping off. I think he plays the pass on halfway on the break.
Yep.
He's dropping deep. You know what I mean? He's not that, he is somebody who's going to come looking for the ball and try and shift it and try and little one touch around the corners. So yeah, like I say, just a shame we weren't able to see it, day after, and it looked like Sky over here almost chose the best game with Sean Dyche's Everton 1-0 down to bottom of the Football League Doncaster. But plenty to be cheerful about after we were all a little bit head scratching, dare I say it, a little bit depressed after Sunday.
Surely Shaqiri's the Swiss Messi.
I tell you,
that's probably more right, to be fair.
He's that type, isn't he?
But it's certainly a big positive that you've got Lyle Foster and Zeki Amdouni both with goals on the board early in the season. That just for the confidence. Strikers always talk about that, don't they? That you just want to get off to the mark. And it was a really confidently taken finish from Amdouni. The big negative, obviously, is Ekdal's injury, which by all accounts is a pretty bad one. Companies saying he's hoping for the best. I don't know. Have we had any further updates on that?
Yeah, I think company said it weren't as severe as they thought it was going to be. It's just going to be a normal rehab now. I'd suspect that probably still means October, November time, because, you know, I don't know whether he's putting a bit of a gloss on that. He said Vitinho, they were still assessing this morning when the press conference was on. I think Ramsey actually went off as a concussion sub.
Yeah.
So that'll have to be. That'll have to be.
So that'll have to be
is there
2
not the
weeks,
sort of,
won't it?
yeah, the 2 week stipulation on that, which is a crying shame so soon into his career at Burnley.
Yeah, so it's you know, there's always ups and downs, aren't there, and always pluses and minuses out of these games, and certainly it was both extremes there, really. But I mean, we're going to go into this Tottenham game, and so much is going to be, you know, the mood music is going to be what happens on this Friday transfer deadline, and it's just got absolutely outrageously absurd, hasn't it? Really, with the amount of rumours. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, because we've always had links. We've always had those links with the knowledge in the past that probably 95% of the links are never going to come to anything in the Sean Dyche, Barry Kilby, Mike Garlick eras, when we certainly weren't very active in the transfer market. We know we are a lot more active, but we can't possibly be going to pull off all of the people that we've listed over the last few days and that we've seen linked. But let's look at some of the ones that do seem to be persistently appearing. I mean, Mike Trezor, I don't know what to say. Off, on, off, on. I mean, probably while we're recording this, there'll be a tweet from somebody saying it's changed status again. I mean, Greavsey, what does it? What as we talk about this now on Thursday evening for our podcast coming out on a Friday morning, what is the situation with Mike Trezor?
Well, there's a plane currently on Flight Tracker just doing loop-de-loops somewhere over the North Sea. So I'm presuming that's Trezor Willie Warnty. But I mean, I'm of that kind of. I said to Kim, my wife, when we were having tea, I said, I can tell Chris Borden's a veteran of transfer windows, because he sent a message to our WhatsApp group basically just going on, off, yawn. And that's kind of what we're at. I mean, it's just been a roller coaster. I'm thinking to myself, well, if he don't want to come, then fine. You know, then I think to myself, well, we faffed him about because we were linked earlier in the window. And of course, you know, Sasha on this podcast said he knows Burnley like him, but Burnley aren't sure what they're going to do. You know, you wonder whether his agents had a word in his ear about, well, actually, West Ham might be interested. Brentford might be interested. Brentford have decided they're going to go and splash near enough 50 million quid with add-ons on Bakayoko, Johan Bakayoko, who we were linked with. So gut feeling says we've got Trezor. You know, perhaps the link with his teammate Pantsil kind of made him, you know, realise actually it is a good opportunity. You know, all the talk in the Belgian press was that he didn't think Burnley's style would suit him. You know, if he was watching the highlights of the Forest game last night, surely that break that we've just been talking about is exactly what you want someone like Mike Trezor to be involved in. But you mentioned it going absurd. I mean, Cole Palmer, we were told quite confidently that, you know, he was pretty much 95% certain to come out on loan to Burnley. Chelsea have gone and spent the best part of 45 million on him with 3 Premier League starts. I
Absolutely
mean,
insane.
where does it end? You know what I mean? It's, yeah, I don't. I'll be glad. I've enjoyed it, but I'll be glad when Jim White ceremoniously slams the window shut tomorrow.
I mean, Chris, when you see a deal like the Bakayoko one, right, where we've been linked with him and it sounded 2 or 3 days ago, I'm pretty sure these numbers start flying across screens and you can lose track very easily. But I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere one of the credible transfer sources on Twitter saying 18 million we were looking at for Bakayoko. And now he's going for 30. He's going for double that to Brentford,
40,
apparently.
Yeah. With the add-ons and everything.
So we're never in for players who are going to cost 40 million,
No.
I don't think. So was he ever a realistic target, or are we just being played with some of this stuff?
I think you've got to. I mean, you've obviously got to sort of dip your toe in the water with some of these players, and you find out where the you know, are other clubs prepared to take it further. I mean, the sort of gist all along was, let's see if you know, he wanted to help PSV beat Rangers, which was an absolute formality. I don't know why I bothered waiting for that, because that was always going to happen, wasn't it? Especially with Goldson's magnificent own goal there last night. But no, like I say, they've obviously dipped their toe in, and can you turn the player's head? Can you get him agitating? We've mentioned that a couple of times. You look at Nunes at Wolves has done the proper. I'm going out on strike to force this through because I'm not missing out on this move to Manchester City. But when all's said and done, I think we can sort of look back with the fondness, or maybe less so. The transfer market dealings. With Mike Garlick and Sean around, but the sort of gist then was, why don't we get deals done earlier? Why don't we just spend the money? And you get, even with money to spend this summer, you can't just go and click your fingers and get these deals done. There's like a domino effect. This deal affects that deal. The price is going to get bumped up on the other deal. I mean, the sheer amount of players they've actually bid, like Sasha was saying the other week to us on the podcast, they've bid for how many players around Europe, and they were just waiting for the pieces to fall into place. Somerville at Leeds that Fabrizio Romano suggesting, another one that they've, we believe Masengo's pretty much done. He was in for his medical this morning, midfielder.
Now follows Burnley on Instagram, apparently. So that pretty much confirms it. Follows Vitinho and Burnley on Instagram. And Josh Brownie.
That's confirmation, isn't it?
I presume he knows Brownie from Bristol City, but he follows Vitinho now as well. So
Vitinho and Masengo we're talking about. Bristol City central midfielder who's been at Auxerre last season. Yeah.
But the same person that told me about that medical this morning suggests there might be as many as 4 medicals tomorrow.
Wow.
If Magic Mike might be one of those, we're still hanging on. Again, it seems to be like Matson's going to make his mind up. Is he going to go to West Ham or Burnley? I mean, given the choice, what do you do? It's but where the other two will the other two be a centre forward, another wide player, a centre half? Given Ekdal and Bayer's injuries,
Yeah, there's a lad from Benfica, of course, been linked. Apparently, that deal, they reckon's been done. Loan deal with an obligation to buy, which clicks in if we survive. Taylor Harwood-Bellis, I don't think's off the table. City looking to loan him because they can't get 15 million. I still think we'll get 2 Premier League loans, and we've not touched those Premier League loans. That feels like a waste. And I just think that's, I got told earlier that we had booked several medicals in at various points, as a lot of clubs do, to be fair, almost in a just in case. Look, you book the slot, and if you can fill it, you can fill it. If not, you've wasted, couple of grand on a private hospital or private doctors to do the medicals and things. But I got told we had pretty much every day this week booked several slots just to make sure we could get them done. Obviously, tomorrow, what we don't need is the air traffic system to go down. We want to be kind of getting all that paperwork done and medicals done as soon as possible. But Simon, you mentioned Vincent looking a little bit harassed after the game in the interview. He's probably just been told Mike Trezor's decided it's not for him, and you've got 3 players injured, and he's still trying to raise a smile whilst being asked, I don't want to say inane questions, but being asked questions and things like that. But, yeah.
The centre-half things come up again with Thomas Araujo from, Benfica is what he gets called as, but he hasn't actually really played much for Benfica, has he? But, highly rated Portugal under-21 international central defender. Fabrizio Romano coming with that one very stridently and confidently, saying that a bid had gone in for him. That looks a little bit the day after. I mean, you don't know. It looks a little bit like maybe he was on a list and then suddenly Ekdal gets injured and it's like, right, okay, press that button now. Yeah, Woody, I mean, there's a reactive element to it, isn't there? But when you look at all this list of names, is there anyone standing out to you you're thinking when you wake up on Friday morning thinking, I hope that one gets done?
Well, it looks like Harwood-Bellis is going to Southampton. He's passed his medical.
Is that breaking news while we're recording, would it?
Breaking news, you're welcome. You'd say Trezor would be quite exciting, and allegedly, according to Sasha about an hour ago, he said he's got his medical tomorrow as well. Down turf. So, but Trezor would be quite exciting. I wouldn't have minded seeing Orwood Bellis back as an option. But I think there's still a lot of do's and don'ts and a little bit of excitement to go today.
Patson Daka's one that's got me like intrigued. I'd say I think he's an interesting one because he fits that sort of central striker that we've been talking about. We've got Foster there, we've got Amdouni who plays off the striker, but a player like Patson Daka who's impressed me on what bits I've seen him for Leicester City, in terms of being a quick, strong centrals forward. That sounded an interesting one, but they paid 23 million for him 2 years ago. Now, we can argue about valuations of players like you were saying, Chris, the other day, when do you lose a bit of a value when you got in a team that gets relegated? But prices have gone up so much as well over the last year, it seems, that it's hard to imagine that they'd sell him for less than what they bought him for. Yeah,
it's a tough one to gauge in terms of price, but certainly remember at the time, they obviously he fit the Vardy profile. That is someone with lightning pace, plays on the shoulder, and certainly fit the mould that's been in place at Leicester for thick end of a decade, really. But I think Vardy's longevity there, he's just never stops, does he? He's he was in and out of the side last year, but forced his way back in, and Daka's not really had the sustained run in the side that he'd have longed for. So if he was to be available, I'm with you. I'd be excited by that one. I think he's a real player. He's that bit more experience as well. International footballer. But if I could go out and get a Patson Daka, I'd be thrilled with that.
Yeah, I asked a few. I put it out and tagged the kind of Leicester City hashtag in, asking, what is he like? 'Cause he scored that hat-trick, didn't he, against Spartak Moscow I think last October. And a bit of a damp squib. Doesn't know how to use his pace, but a couple of people really kind of, works hard, fast, decent finisher. And as you said, Chris, someone said he reminds me so much of Vardy during his first couple of years there. Issue is he hasn't really kind of had that consistency of games. He's been in and out of the side. Somebody else thought that he'd do well, tidy finisher, lethal, real potential. Somebody else said that he just wouldn't fit the kind of one of the boards I was looking at basically said when Rodgers was in charge he'd do really well for a Daesh or somebody who likes to play balls into a forward, balls beyond. Lots of managers he'd play well with. And a lot of Leicester fans who interacted with me yesterday said, they really believe he's got that potential. Now, you had these stats from when he was at Salzburg, and it is an incredible. What is it? Something like 50-odd goals and 80-odd appearances when he was at Salzburg.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd be happy with that. I think, clearly looking at Somerville at Leeds, he's looking for a forward, isn't he? He's looking for a forward, perhaps a central player. I just think, I'm hoping Matt Williams is going to be very, 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 very busy tomorrow. And that we get all these deals done, dusted, over the line, ready for, some of them at least to be able to play on Saturday if needed.
Yeah, I mean, there's one or two come up and you sort of think, really? Are we still talking about... I mean, the one today that got me was Jack Clark. Are we still being linked with Jack Clark? Does he still fit into the picture? Anyone?
No, it seemed a strange one. Like I said, given the amount of promising young wide players, and again, you look at that English premium, £15 million or so. But the encouraging ththing is, though, I said before the window closes tomorrow, I think Alan Pace, Burnley Football Club, are going to, this money's burning a hole in their pocket. They're going to spend it, no matter who it's on. They're going to spend it. That's the exciting thing for Burnley fans. You're going to have a significant, multi-million-pound deal tomorrow at minimum. I think it's unseen of, isn't it, in Burnley Football Club history, really.
Yeah, I'd personally like one of them to be an absolute mega deal, though. I'd rather have one player coming on 35 million that is going to make a massive difference to the season than two or three other players who are they going to be in the squad? Are they going to be in the starting 11? You know, because I mean now the way the money has gone in this window, we are talking about 10, 15 million for players who might not be starters. You know, which is incredible to think about. What 15 million is the club record purchase for years, hasn't it? It's been. Yeah. I mean, what was that? Chris Wood, Ben Gibson.
Yeah, all hovering around that, isn't it? But what I do think, I mean, there was talk on The Athletic today that we'd had a loan bid for Eric Dyer turned down, and I wonder whether that is as a centre midfielder. I'll throw that name in. I think I've thrown this name in before. Is the kind of the big deal a wages deal and somebody like Calvin Phillips? You know, do you go to City and kind of go, right, you know what, if Arwood Bellis is going Southampton, fine, get the lad in from Benfica if we want a defender in. You know, I think we saw Delquar played quite well as a left-hand side centre-half, you know, so does he plug the gap for now while we're waiting for Bayer to come back? We've still got Alder Keel who can play there, you know, or we bring in Taylor back in. If not, is Maatsen coming back in? So there's all these variables, but do we kind of go, you know, the big money deal is not going to be a £35 million signing. Is the big money deal going to be, well, actually, it's going to be Eric Dyer and we're going to have to fund 80% of his wages, which comes in at God knows what, 110, 120 grand. And we justify it by going, well, actually, that's not cost us a fee. Or if it has, it's cost us a couple of £1 million loan fee. I just wonder whether that's the thinking, you know, because I think it's clear, you know, I think it's really clear that, you know, company is not, it feels like there's this scattergun approach. But I think everything is backed up with intent. I think everything is backed up with data. I think everything is backed up with a belief and a desire to craft the best team that we will have. And I think as well, I have to say, and this is rare on the podcast, #theagenda, to have a chairman who is willing to back the manager to the degree that Alan Pace and the AOK board has done, and we can probably talk about finance in a few minutes, I think that is a really refreshing thing. Now, you know, whether it all goes to hell in a handcart in 2 or 3 years' time, and we're all sat here, you know, recording, you know, National League playoff special because we've been relegated out of the Football League due to financial irregularities, I don't know. But what I will say is fair play to him. Alan Pace, little Al, backing his manager to the hilt. You want this player, we'll go after them. There is a limit, and I think Sean was a bit like that as well, and VK is a bit like this. You know, they know value of players. You know, clearly Maatsen, we could have spent 20 million quid on Maatsen, clearly. The money's there. But VK clearly looked at that as a businessman, as well as a football manager, and went, his cap is 12 million. We're not paying a single penny more than 12 million. We're not going to panic. We've got somebody else who we can bring in if need be. And I think that's the really refreshing approach to the way we've done it, rather than, you know, and it did feel a bit like Trezor was going to become our Lansbury or our Andrew Driver or our, you know, insert name of our new Dale Stevens, and we get him in, you know, 10 years time when he's 34 and he's finished. I don't know. But praise to Alan Pace. You know, I don't say it often. I'm still pissed off about the pie situation last Sunday. But fair play to him for backing Vincent Kompany and having that trust in him. I think we have to have that trust in VK as well, that tomorrow could possibly go down as one of the most maddest. You know, it almost feels like when Robinho signed for Man City, there could be VK stood there with, you know, anybody holding a shirt up tomorrow. And that, when have we ever said that before at Burnley?
Berbatov.
Yeah. Bambo, we're getting Bambo back. Finally, he's going to realise his dream.
Woody, what do you make of all this? That's quite a picture painted there by Andrew.
I know, it's exhausting though, isn't it? You know, it's like trundling and desperately clinging on to any faint rumour of the past is long gone. You're just like sick to fucking death of on, off, etc. And like, you could have Eden Hazard on Friday morning and then his brother in Friday afternoon. Any old twat could turn up and it could be absolutely fabulous. But I must admit, I do like Greaves's little theory about the top marquee signings being loans. That makes a hell of a lot of sense. I do like the idea of Calvin Phillips trotting up and struggling with our pies.
Exactly what this team needs is Calvin Phillips. Exactly the missing piece, to be honest. I mean, if you were to draw up the identikit footballer for what that team against Aston Villa was missing, it was a big, strong central midfielder protecting, allowing Sanderberger to go and do runs like he did at Forest, allowing Cullen to play his game, pinging balls out wide to wingers, which is what he did at Leeds United and what he was supposed to do at Manchester City. You know, he's an England international midfielder who would have probably, had it not been for his injury, kept his place alongside Declan Rice in Gareth Southgate's system right the way through. You know, this whole period.
And the funny thing is, Leeds have been linked with Jeff Hendrick, which would be just a nice little about turn if we were to take Calvin Phillips and they were to get Jeff Hendrick. They're just how times have changed, sort of thing. Yeah,
it's a little bit of Schadenfreude there. But yeah, that for me would be
very amusing.
I will be happy. I'll say this, and we'll go around and do this now. But I'll say I will take Patson Daka and Calvin Phillips, and that'll do me. That'll do me tomorrow. So, Chris, what would you take if you were to take 2 or 3? We might end up with more, as we said, but
I really like Magic Mike. From what I've seen of him, I'm really excited. And if it's the latest toss of the coins come down on, we'll take that. And a centre half. So I'd love it to have been Harwood Bellis. If it's to be some kid from Benfica instead, then so be it.
Greavsey, where you're going on? Where's your 2 or 3 falling down on?
Phillips, definitely. I've thought that for a couple of weeks. As soon as it came out that City were, willing to let him go out on loan to almost rehabilitate the playing time. We know he's injury free. We've seen sparks when he played back end of last season. I think he would suit this system. I absolutely could not agree more when you were saying he's what we needed. And yeah, I'm with Chris. I mean, let's just say we're going to play Charlie Taylor at left back, so we don't have to worry about a left back in my kind of ideal world. Charlie's suddenly kind of, VK's realised that he can play left back. First time he's seen him play left back, I think. Magic Mike for me, Mike Tressor. I think he was the one I was excited about right at the start of the window when there was that faint whiff of a possibility. So yeah, Phillips and Trezor for me, Simon.
Woody, go on. Say Eric Dyer. Go on.
I'm going to say Eric Dyer. Eric Dyer and Phillips, just to shore it up a little bit at back. But I'd be, you'd be quite happy with Daka and you'd be quite happy with Trezor, which is not the question that you asked. But I wouldn't say no to Eric Dyer. I think it'd be a lot cuter than we give it credit for. But definitely Phillips. That'd be lovely. Really would.
As someone was saying today, though, we'll say what happens if someone from the long side gives Eric a bit of grief. He's going to be climbing over the fences there, isn't he? That was one Burnley fan's view today, so I don't want that.
Well, it's more like to be Bob Lord stand, isn't it? Which that could be quite entertaining, actually. Yeah. But yeah, well, it all will be revealed throughout Friday. I suppose we should look a little bit ahead to Saturday, even though we don't know what kind of squad we're going to have available. But let's presume that these signings aren't going to be ready to make their debuts on Saturday, even though they're in the door. Might be a few of them walking out onto the pitch and waving to the fans and a buzz around Turf Moor with those signings. But what do you think Company does? Having seen what he's seen at Forest, having been given a pretty strong nudge from a few of those players that he's put to one side, let's say, for the first couple of games, do we see a sort of compromise on what he was trying to do in the first couple of games, Greavesy?
Yeah, I think we do. I think I think he's pragmatic. He's. I think there's a stubbornness there, and he wants to craft the team in his image in the Premier League. But I think there's certain things, I'm not sure he'll change goalkeeper, if I'm really honest. I think he will stick with Trafford. But certainly I think Brownhill I think Charlie Taylor, if we don't get a left back in before 12 o'clock, because let's be honest, I think all signings will have to be registered before 12 to be eligible for Saturday. So there is that, and then it's kind of 2 weeks, till the next game. But I think we will see a slightly changed lineup. I think Amdouni keeps his place. Perhaps Koleosho drops out and we see Johan start, because I think he's been impressive when we've seen Johan come on, or perhaps Redmond. I think Foster keeps his place and perhaps plays more central, kind of up top, because I think he's probably done enough over, 2 man of the match appearances so far in the Premier League at Turf Moor. I kind of see that continuing. But I think he'll know that actually alongside Burge in that middle of the park, we're going to have to shore it up a little bit. There's going to have to be something in there, especially against Spurs. I've been super impressed with Postecoglou since he came in. I mean, A, he seems like an absolutely top bloke, but B, he's got that Spurs midfield three really, really working. He's bringing players back in from, the wilderness. I think Sarr, who was out of favour with Conte, didn't really get a sniff. He's looked fabulous. And I think, a bit like with Villa, unless we stamp our authority in the middle of the park, we're going to get overrun, and that will cause the problems further forward, will nullify the way we play. So I think, he'll know. He said in his press conference that he's followed Postecoglou in Japan, at Celtic, now at Spurs. I think he'll be pragmatic and we will see changes again. I don't think it'll be quite as wild as the last 2 games.
You agree, Woody?
I think I do. Yeah, a lot of it, like you say, he's been able to shore it up and bring in. I mean, he has trusted Goodmanson to do this job previously. I think he'll come in and tighten things up, etc. So yeah, I think he's just got to be a little bit more structured, especially against his Tottenham side. Like you say, they'll pass us off any park. They genuinely will. So we do need to have something in the middle of that part.
Have you had a chance to see much of Spurs, Chris?
Yeah, I've seen some fairly in-depth discussions on Spurs. Primarily on Sky Sports and what have you. But I was just saying about Postecoglou when he was being asked about his system, and he was just joking. He said, "I'm just copying Pep." That was the sort of gist. Gary Neville had done his analysis, and he was sort of like looking at the similarities. I think we're all just living in Pep's world, aren't we? We're all trying to play. Unless you can play like Brazil 70, you're going to play like Guardiola, aren't you? It's everyone wants the fullback sort of coming into midfield. You're inverting the fullbacks. Almost a front six at times. The carousel, putting the ball on the carousel and passing teams to death. But I'd just opt for Brownhill. I'd play Brownhill in that central three. Probably with maybe Burge off the front. I'd say it has to be, if it's Maatsen comes through the door or a left back, we have to play an out and out left back, and Charlie Taylor has to play if there's nobody comes through the door tomorrow. And I'd say Foster's earned the right, hasn't he? Now he's got the shirt.
Yeah,
it's who he plays as he's wider forwards. Maybe Amdouni goes wider. He's played sort of ahead of Foster, sort of off Foster. It's he might have to play a wider role maybe. And I'd like to see Redmond do someone like or a Goodmanson in one of that wide forward roles. Really, just a bit more nous, a bit more experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I really do hope he does do that, Company, because I think if he puts out the same sort of formation and team that he did against City and Villa, we're asking for trouble against Spurs, I think. And there should have been enough signs there. I've seen people come with all sorts of theories about, Company knows it's not his strongest team. He's just blooding these lads so they've got the experience. And I don't buy that. I think he went out there and thought, these are my young guns. These are ones that I'm backing this season. They're going to do it for me. These are the lads, they've got to fight their way back into the team and so on. And I think that performance at Forest from a few of them was them fighting their way back into the team. You know, and it's a massive positive that someone like Charlie Taylor, who, as I was saying on the last podcast that I spoke on, I was saying, you know, I think he's been treated pretty badly. But his response is to go out there and give a good, solid display against Nottingham Forest. He's not sulking. He's not been in the press talking about wanting to leave. He's not been linked with any moves.
Chance would be a fine thing, I think.
Well, maybe, yeah, but you know, but he went out there and delivered, and the other players have done the same. I mean, Brownhill, when he was, you know, I was sort of looking at them when he tweeted the Team of the Year thing out, and you're sort of thinking to yourself, he could have dropped a sarcastic little comment in there, couldn't he, having been left out, and he didn't, you know. So yeah, I hope he does draw the lessons from that Forest game, and I think we could, because we need a point out of that game against Spurs. I think we do. You know, I mean, it's a tough ask again, but we can't go through the season saying these aren't the games that we need to win. We can't keep saying that every week. You know, I know it's a tough start to the season, but we have to start picking up some surprise points, you know, here and there, don't we? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think that does us for this week. It's all going to be unveiled as we all enjoy Friday and the madness that is to come, and we'll be back soon to evaluate it. We'll see how quickly we can do that after Friday's deadline closes. But until then, enjoy your football and all the best. Don't forget to follow us on social media at B-Hole Podcast on Twitter and everywhere else. Do please leave us reviews on Apple Podcast and everywhere else. It really does help us get up the charts and also get noticed by other Burnley fans who haven't had the pleasure of listening to this podcast. So all the best and have a great weekend. Cheers.